You know, when we think about 19th century India, it's easy to just picture political change. But what was really going on was this massive, ground-shaking transformation. It wasn't just about who was in charge. It was a deep, cultural and ideological remaking of a society. And let me tell you, this process was anything but simple. It was a fight.
And that gets you thinking, doesn't it? How does the society even begin to reinvent itself when it's being pulled in two completely opposite directions at the very same time? I mean, how do you build a new future while you're also grappling with your past and fending off this powerful outside force?
Well, that's exactly what was happening. In the 19th century, India wasn't just fighting one cultural war, but two. It was this incredible battle happening simultaneously, both inside the house and right at the front door.
Okay, so let's break this down. This whole complex situation really boils down to two major struggles. On one side, you have what we're calling the battle within, a fight against the backward, often debilitating elements of its own traditional culture. And on the other side, you've got the battle without, a struggle against the encroaching, and let's face it, dominating culture of the colonial powers. We're going to break down this whole dual struggle, starting with the battle India fought with itself. So this first battle was fought from the inside out. This was a period of some serious self-reflection, as a new generation of Indian thinkers started to challenge these long-standing traditions, all in an effort to build a stronger foundation for the future.
And a huge piece of this puzzle was religious reform. But just look at these goals. This wasn't just about what people believed in. This was about liberating the individual from, and this is a great phrase, conformity born out of fear. By simplifying rituals, by translating sacred text, these reformers were basically breaking the stranglehold of religious dogma and empowering everyday people to think for themselves.
And then, of course, there was the elephant in the room, the caste system. The reformers pretty much universally saw it as not just morally wrong, but as a direct threat to any kind of national unity. They argued it totally stifled patriotism and stood in the way of any real democratic progress.
But how do you even begin to fix something that ingrained? Well, there wasn't one single answer. You had thinkers like Dayanand who argued for reform from within. He looked at that rigid hierarchy, with Brahmins, the priests at the top, and Shudras, the laborers, at the bottom. And he proposed this radical idea. What if caste wasn't about who your parents were, but about who you were, your virtue? As he put it, the person with the best knowledge and character is the one who deserves to be a Brahmin, while an ignorant person fits the role of a Shudra. It's about character, not your bloodline.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, this whole idea of reforming the system kicked off this fierce debate among the reformers themselves. While Dayanand wanted to kind of fix the existing structure, others, like Jyotiba Phule and Narayana Guru, were like, no, the system itself is the problem. They believed it couldn't be fixed, it had to be completely abolished.
And that's where someone like Narayana Guru, who came from a lower caste background, put forth this incredibly powerful unifying call. His vision was a total rejection of the divisions that had plagued society for so long. It was simple, it was radical, and it was a profound alternative to the complicated hierarchies of the past.
The reformers also locked onto a really crucial strategic point. You just can't build a modern nation on a shaky foundation. They realized that progress was basically impossible if women, the very people playing the central role in raising the next generation, were, as they put it, sunk in ignorance. So improving the status of women wasn't just about being a good person, it was a practical, absolute necessity for any real change to happen.
Okay, but remember, all of this internal soul-searching wasn't happening in a bubble, not at all. It was going on at the exact same time that second battle was raging. The fight to defend Indian culture from being totally erased by outside colonial influence.
And this is such a critical point to understand. The reformers were not anti-modern, far from it. They wanted modernization. They wanted progress, science, new ideas. What they resisted, what they fought against, was Westernization, which they saw as just a blind imitation of Western habits and culture. They were determined to forge their own path to modernity on their own terms.
So what they were pushing back against, well, there's actually a term for it: cultural hegemony. It's what happens when a ruling power makes its own culture seem like it's the only natural or correct way to be. And Indian thinkers, they recognized this and consciously started to build a defense against it.
And their strategy was brilliant. It wasn't just about saying no, it was about actively creating and building. They poured energy into strengthening their own languages, their own art, their own education systems, even their own traditions around things like dress and food. It was a cultural counteroffensive designed to revive and regenerate an indigenous identity.
But we have to remember, these weren't just abstract ideas being debated in halls. These were battles fought by real people, and the personal cost, it was often incredibly high. This wasn't just some intellectual exercise, it had profound real-world consequences.
I mean, can you imagine? For the men and women who were caught right in the middle of these two worlds, the pull of old traditions and the promise of a new way of thinking, the emotional turmoil was just immense. It caused deep crises within families, within entire communities. Just look at the first widow remarriage in Bengal. This wasn't some quiet, private family affair. No way! It was a massive public spectacle that drew thousands of onlookers, which just shows you how shocking and controversial this break with tradition really was for the public. And it wasn't just about getting stared at. There was real physical danger. Think about this. In Maharashtra, the very first couple to remarry after widowhood had to be given clubs by the police just to protect themselves from an angry public. That's how deep the resistance ran. Or take the story of Rukmabai. Here's this young woman who simply refused to stay in a child marriage with a man she didn't want. And her one personal act of defiance? It unleashed a national firestorm of debate about tradition, consent, and women's rights. So, after all that struggle, all that tension, what was the result? Where did this painful two-front war ultimately lead? Well, it led to the creation of something completely new. When you step back and look at it, you can see a clear path forming. Step 1, a decisive intellectual break with the most damaging parts of tradition. Step 2, a spirited resistance to colonial cultural dominance. And the result of those two movements colliding? The birth of a new, modern Indian national consciousness. At the end of the day, this twin battle, against internal decay and external pressure, it literally forged a new India. It created, in the powerful words of the time, new men, new homes, and a new society.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The story of 19th century India is a powerful reminder that building a better future often means fighting a tough war on two fronts, against our own past and against outside pressures. It really makes you wonder, right? What traditions are we challenging in our own society today? And what kind of future are we really fighting for?